I asked Monsignor to preach at all the Masses this weekend. Around this time of year in our country, we have things like the State of the Union, where our president will talk about the state of the country, issues that are facing us all. And I want to talk about the state of the parish by talking in particular about the ministry that affects our parish the most, and that is our school. If we start talking about our school, it is the largest ministry that we have as a parish. And I want you to understand just a little bit of the basics about how when you put $1 in the offertory, about what that money is being used for. And this hopefully will give you a sense of mission and a sense of purpose and understanding what it is that your dollars are supporting. When we talk about our school, when we put money, I used to think, like when I received my first paycheck, I remember it was like $300 from Walmart, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, $300, like what am I going to spend this all on? And you start to realize very quickly is that dollar, every dollar you get, even before you have spent it, it has a destination it needs to go to, whether that be the withholdings for Social Security, whether that means you have to start paying mom and dad rent or you have to pay for gas money, whether that means paying for food or different types of insurance. What we realize as adults is that the money that comes in, about 90% of it is already accounted for, and it's just that little bit that we have left over that is actual free spending money. I might have even thought that same way when I got to the parish as pastor at St. Francis of Assisi, and I looked in the bulletin and I saw the $1.2 million budget that we raise every year with the offertory, and I'm like, wow, what should I buy with that? I had no idea how to spend this all. But then slowly but surely you realize is that every dollar, for the most part, already has a destination. And if you want to talk about just without going through the entire budget and having your eyes glaze over, just make it simple for you. Half of every dollar that you put into the collection basket or that you give online goes to our school. It supports the mission of our school of being able to give children when they are younger a first experience of Jesus Christ, a foundation to last them the rest of their lives. But just also talking about, what does that money getting spent on? How does that money go to fund the school? The main way that it's used to fund the school is to keep Catholic education affordable. Stated in a negative way and then a positive way. In a negative way, we lose money on every student that walks through our doors. Every single student. This is not a money-making operation. And so what happens, though, is that people will often look at a private education, and of course they see the tuition that comes out front, and they see that our tuition this year was about $6,500. And they think to themselves, oh my gosh, how is it that we are losing money? You could talk to any public school administrator. In fact, one of the ushers at our 4 p.m. Mass is the vice superintendent of a school district in the area. And even though public education is quote-unquote free, he could tell you off the top of his head what the actual cost to educate a child is, and it's in the tens of thousands of dollars. At St. Francis of Assisi, the cost to educate a child is $9,400. And so while tuition is expensive, and our parents are making a real sacrifice to send their kids to a Catholic school, it does not cover the entire cost to educate a child. For that first child, $2,800, or approximately 30%, the parish says, we see your sacrifice that you are making to give your child a Catholic education, and so we as a parish are going to make a sacrifice of 30% of that cost to educate in order to make sure that your child is able to receive this education, that this is not too much of a hit on your bank account, that we notice your sacrifice and we respect it and we make our own. But the sacrifice from the parish is even greater than that, because let's say that in our elementary school, kindergarten through 8th grade, you decide to send a second child to St. Francis of Assisi school. That second child, because that is an even greater sacrifice, you're taking so much more of that money that right now that you're not paying for gas and food and rent. We realize that it's even a bigger chunk. We say as a parish, you know what? Because you are sacrificing more, the parish is going to up its sacrifice too. to the point where the second child, rather than paying the full $6,500 tuition, they are paying about $3,100 for that second child. Meaning that if you want to look at the total cost to educate, that means at that point the parish is paying 47%, essentially half of what it costs to educate a child. When the parents up their sacrifice, we as a parish up our sacrifice. And to the point where the third child, when they go to the school, we only charge $800 in tuition to educate that child. So that when we take those three children together and we take the total cost to educate, that means that when you have three children in our kindergarten through 8th grade, that we as a parish are taking on 63% of the cost to educate those children. If you as parents are making sacrifices to give your children a Catholic education, we as a parish family are also sacrificing to make that possible. But on top of that, so I want to talk to you then about how the parish, again, in other ways even than that we support that school aside from what we call the parish subsidy, the amount of money that we give, that gap between tuition and the cost to educate. The subsidy is what we fill in the gap with. But you are, as parishioners, not only the first line of defense of making sure that Catholic education is affordable through your offerings in the offertory, but you are also the second line of defense and the last line of defense to make sure that Catholic education is affordable. About 10 to 15 years ago, the then Archbishop Carlson, he wanted to have a capital campaign throughout the entire archdiocese. And what he wanted to do was fund through tens of millions of dollars all throughout the archdiocese is to create a fund called the Today and Tomorrow Education Fund. And this would provide tuition assistance to the families who otherwise might not be able to afford a Catholic education. Each year, that Today and Tomorrow Education Fund, even though it looks like it's run by the archdiocese, it is funded by dollars that our parishioners, past and present, gave to that fund 10 to 15 years ago. And right now it's a very big help to keep our costs down of being able to help out with the students that can't pay. And everybody who applies, they apply with all their financial information and everything like that. And for some families, it might only give them $100. But for some of our families in the school, it is funding about $2,000 per child in the school to make sure that Catholic education is affordable. So that's the second line of defense. The first one is the parish subsidy. It's that 50% of every dollar that you put into the offertory that goes to our school to keep tuition down for all of our families. Then there's the Today and Tomorrow Education Fund, which is money that we gave in the past for this capital campaign. But then the final line of defense to keep Catholic education affordable is the Francis Fund. Francis Fund is a fund that was set up, again, about 10 to 15 years ago. And the idea behind it is that we don't want people to not be able to give their kids a Catholic education for the sole reason that they otherwise would not be able to afford it. We make it our goal, even if it might be really difficult to do it in reality, it is our goal that nobody is turned away from our school just because they're not able to pay. And so what will happen with the Francis Fund is that we currently have a budget of about $50,000. And what will happen is that after they apply for the Today and Tomorrow Education Fund, they take that financial information and it goes to my desk. And I will, in the months of June and July, be meeting with every family that applies for the Francis Fund. And we will be talking over tuition and seeing how do we make this $50,000 stretch to all of the families that need it. And then how much is it that you need in order to be able to send your child to the school? And in that common conversation, we come up with a number, and that helps to fund tuition. It keeps those children in our school who might not otherwise be able to go. But the problem is with the Francis Fund, and this is really the point of what I want to talk to you about today, is that when we started the Francis Fund, again, those 10 to 15 years ago, the total amount of dollars that we had at our disposal was higher than $50,000. The amount of Francis Fund has remained the same, or it's even gone slightly down. And you know how much costs have gone up in the last 10 to 15 years. I know you don't need me to explain that to you. But so we have a pot of money which is the same size or even a little bit smaller, which is trying to cover these increasing costs that have happened. And I'll tell you what, by the end of June and July, if I have 2 nickels to rub together a Francis fund, I feel like I'm rich. Because all of that money winds up getting taken up in those first few 2 months. And I think that that's part of my responsibility as a pastor, huh? If you're giving that money in order to fund tuition assistance, I want to make sure that every single dollar goes out to tuition assistance. The issue that I'm having right now is that when I wind up spending all $50,000 of that money for tuition assistance over the summer, financial emergencies don't restrict themselves to June and July. They happen throughout the entire year. Somebody loses a job. Somebody has insurance that they thought was going to cover something, and the insurance company comes back and says, "We're sorry, it's not going to cover it." Somebody has rent that they're not able to pay, or some other emergency. Somebody has a family member that gets sick and they have to stay home from work in order to take care of mom or dad. All of those things are real problems that face families, and those unforeseen circumstances, which suddenly, even though Catholic education may have been affordable before that point, when they experience a crisis like that, they might have to be choosing between taking care of mom or dad or taking their kids out of Catholic school. And that's the reality of the situation that many of our families are facing. And so, brothers and sisters, what I am looking for in the ask that I am making is, on top of the $50,000 that we have currently available for Francis Fund, I want to be able to raise the amount of money that we have available by $20,000 so that our total is $70,000. And over the summer, I would still give out the same amount. I would have a personal budget of $50,000 to be able to give out, but then I would have $20,000 available for the rest of the year to be able to handle all of the other emergencies that come our way. If you want to give to Francis Fund, there's 2 ways of doing this. First of all, if you get the stack of envelopes that comes each month, one of those envelopes is particularly for the Francis Fund. If you never knew what that was before, well, now you do, and it would be great if you would just add a few extra dollars to your Francis Fund on top of what you already give. Every single dollar helps. But then there's the online giving route where you go and you are selecting where you want your money to go towards. You can choose to add a few extra dollars to the Francis Fund that way as well. And I would love to be able for you to know at some point, if you contribute to Francis Fund, maybe even starting a newsletter or something, of letting you know the different ways that I get to see on a weekly, sometimes monthly basis, about the families that you are able to help through Francis Fund, realizing that your money really is making a difference. I just had a meeting yesterday with a man who, very proud, because he didn't want to ask anybody for help, and yet had to come in, and he wasn't even asking for money. He was just asking that I delay collecting tuition payments for a month or 2. And so here it is that in his pride, he was I don't want to take any money. I don't want to, and I finally was able to help him see things in a little bit different of a way. And it's like, don't see this as a charity case. Because how you should see it instead is that at this moment in time, you're not able to pay. But one day in the future, when you are a member of still a member of our parish, or maybe even in a different parish, you do have those extra dollars at your disposal and you're not in the financial hardship that you are now, you take that as an opportunity to pay it forward. You are paying for the next guy just as our parish today paid for you. And so you don't have to see this as a charity case. You can see this as a way of just getting a loan from the parish that you pay back when you're ready to pay it. And it was just so amazing, just first of all, about how much he wanted to make this work on his own and how humble he had to be to even come in for help in the first place. And yet I just was asking him, just please take the money. I don't want you to be in this state where you have to worry about paying for your child's education and taking care of this insurance claim that you have. So brothers and sisters, I would just ask you at some point just to consider to get up your gift just a little bit towards the Francis Fund and help us to meet our goal so that we can meet our mission, our goal as a parish of making sure that Catholic education is affordable for all of our students.